And we're back. In the previous video, we went ahead and set up map group 4 to have its very own light map, and it didn't have to be combined with anything else. All the objects are still unique. They're all their own objects, all sharing the same materials, sharing the same light map. And let's go ahead and do the same thing for another texture group. So I'll go ahead and open up our outliner again, and I'm going to go ahead, in fact, I'll just go to this UV texture editor, and I will drop down my panels again, just like we did last time. Open up the panel outliner, and this time I'm doing map group 5. I'm gonna open this up, and I just want to make sure that I did delete those light maps. I did not, so 1 second, let me delete all these light maps. And I'm back. I got rid of all those light maps, so now I'm ready to move forward. So just like we did before, we'll go ahead and copy these UVs to a new UV map. So we'll go to polygons, go to copy UVs to UV set, copy them to a new UV set, and I'll just go ahead and click that. And then I'll go ahead and select the next object. And because the last thing I did was copied UVs to a new UV set, all I have to do is hit G on the keyboard now. So just select that one, hit G, select that one, hit G, and all the way down the list. Okay, now all of my objects have UV, so I'm going to hold down Shift. I'm going to select all of the objects, and I'm going to drop this down and make sure that all of them are set to light map. Again, if one of them is not set to light map, you'll notice it because they should look evenly divided all the way down the list. And let me show you, for example, let's say this one here was selected, and we're going to open this up. Now I can see that there's a break. Two of these are dead on top of one another, so that's a problem. That means this one here is not set to the light map that it should be set to. So I want to set this to the correct UV set. So I will look. This is the one it should be set to, so I'll go ahead and check that box. There we go. Now they're all set to light map. All right, so now I'm going to select all of the objects. Then I'm going to right click, select UV. I'm going to select everything. I'm going to go to polygons, open up our layout options, and your options should be set to the same that they weren't before. I'm going to go ahead and scale this up so you can pause the video and make sure your settings are the same as mine. Then I'm going to go ahead and click apply, right? And that's going to lay out my UVs. But some of these aren't scaled correctly, and so like before, I like to spam this 3 times minimum. I always do 3 times minimum. So now one of the problems that we have if we take a look here and we zoom in is we have these really small UV shells. And part of the problem with that with light mapping is that if a shell is too small, it will not pick up any information from the light map. There's just not enough texel density for it, not enough resolution in these little tiny shells for it to really collect any good lighting information. What we need to do is scale all these little shells up. Part of the problem with that is if I right click and I go to shell and I select one, you'll notice that everything else disappears. Well, we don't want that to happen because we can't really select all them little circles from all these various potion bottles and scale them up that way. So what I'll have to do is select all the objects. And if I just go back into this view here, hold down right click and go to object mode, and just deselect one and then reselect it, then go back to the UV texture editor, watch what happens. I can now select them all. It's just a little bug. I don't know why that is, but there's some little bug where you have to go in, deselect one and reselect it, and then it'll work to where I can just work with all of them. Just pro tip right there, keep that in mind. It's actually very useful to know how to do that. Now I'm going to select shell. I'm just going to go through and I'm going to select all of these little tiny objects, just the really small ones that I think, you know what, it's not big enough to collect color information, so I want to scale it up. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video for just a second while I collect all of these shells, and I'll be back in a second. All right, so now I have all of my really tiny shells selected. What I'm going to do is hit R on the keyboard, and I'm just going to scale these up to where they all look like they're relatively decent size that they could collect color information. I think that's pretty decent right there. They're a lot bigger than they were. They were really tiny before, and I don't think they really could have gotten anything. So now let's go ahead and right-click UVs again. I'll scale all the way out, and I'm going to select everything. I'm going to go into polygons, go into layout, but this time I'm going to do something a bit different. Instead of using the scale set to prescale set to world, I'm going to set this to none and click apply. And now you'll notice that now they're all a lot bigger. They can now collect color information, and I'm a lot better off now than I was before. So that's how you handle the really tiny ones. The first time we prescaled it to world, so everything was uniform. All the other larger shells were uniform to one another and all had the same texel density, same resolution to one another. But the second time I did it, I went back and I grabbed all them tiny shells and I scaled them ones up. And then I went ahead and did another layout with the prescale set to none so it wouldn't change that scale size that I did. And that's the big change there for handling the little shells, because you don't want really tiny shells. And while I'm at it and I'm talking about, optimizing these UV maps, there are some other things that you really want to do with UV maps. For instance, you see how this wall piece here could have been connected to this wall and it would have eliminated this seam here? Because what you're looking at is actually this object right here. This face here could have been connected to this face here and it would have eliminated this seam. With light mapping, that's kind of something you really want to do, is try to eliminate as many seams as possible. So for the purposes of these videos, I'm not going to take the time to do that because I already did that on my actual project. And these are just demo videos. But another thing you also want to look at is, say, this back wall here. So I'll right click, I'll go to object mode. I'm going to select this back wall and take a look at what I did here. Now for this one, you have this side is flipped over and it's stacked on this side. This is my texture map. If I go to my UV sets and you look at my light map, you can see that I actually eliminated that seam for the light map. This is essential with light mapping, especially for the modern game engines, is to eliminate seams anywhere and everywhere possible. And for instance, like with this design here, I have a wall here, I have a wall here, and then I have this center beam hiding the seam that would appear between those two walls. So if I move this wall here, I hid that line there using this. And you really want to try to do stuff like that with modern game engines. That's just a little bit of experience there with light mapping, my experience with light mapping and game engines specifically. So now that we have everything set up, let's go ahead and get back on task. I'm going to go up back to the panels. I'm going to set this back to our outliner, and I'm going to select all those new textures that we just set up our light map for with nothing is too small. All these are big enough to collect color information. We're good to go here. And we're going to go ahead and go up to color, drop it down, and we want to do our batch bake mineral ray again. Open this up. All your settings should be the same from the previous video. The only thing that we have to change is the prefix at this point. So I just got to change prefix, and this is my map group 5, because this is my 5th material for this scene. And I'll go ahead and hit LM5, and I want to make sure I get rid of that blinking cursor. I press enter. That is essential. I can't tell you how annoying it is to not hit enter and overwrite a previous light map, because then you got to go back and rebake that one. It's just really annoying. So always make sure the cursor is gone. Type in the new name and get rid of the cursor, hit enter, okay? And then once you do that, I'll go ahead and click convert, and it'll think for 1 second, and then I'll go ahead and open this up, and we should have a second light map. And there it is. And this does probably look like it was done wrong, but this is actually correct. And the reason why all of those big shells, you can't see anything on them, is because if I go back into the perspective view and I show you, I'll go back to perspective, a lot of that is outside. And outside is going to render black. All these faces will. So that's why that looks like that. It's actually done correctly. So no worries there. Anyhow, back on task, I'm going to go ahead and minimize this mineral ray baking options. Actually, I can just close it because I'm done with that for now. We'll go back to lighting, use flat lighting here. And we got to go ahead and plug these textures in like we did before. So we'll go ahead and open up our Hypershade editor, and we'll go ahead and scale this out here. And I just have to go ahead and clear our little polite here. So I'll just go ahead and clear that with the little eraser tool. And we'll find material 5. And I just want our map 5 matte. I'll go ahead and pull out the inputs and outputs for that one, scale out a bit, give us some room, delete the connection, and we got to add that light map file. So I'll come up here, go to 2D textures, select file, gives me a new file. I'll just change this name to lightmap_5. So that's my lightmap 5, and I will select that lightmap. And this should automatically go to your lightmap folder if it's the last thing you did. So go ahead and select lightmap 5. There we go, that's taken care of, and I can just drag this over here, and we also need a layered texture. So I will go ahead and go to other textures, layered texture, drag this on over, select the lightmap 5, middle mouse click the layered texture over to color, select the layered texture, middle mouse click the light map over to it, kill that one, set this to illuminate, and select the layered texture once again, and middle mouse drag the material over to it. So now we have these taken care of. This one's over, this one's illuminate, and we're good to go. We just have to open up our window texture centric. So I'll go to window relationship editors, go ahead and grab the UV linking texture centric, and I also need our outliner open. So go ahead and select that. Open up texture group 5. There we go. I'll select the first one, and then I'll just switch all these to light map. And I'll go ahead and skip ahead because you already seen me do this before. And there you have it. They're all taken care of. So go ahead and close these windows here. Well, I'll just go ahead and open up the perspective window, and there you have it. You can kind of see that color tint coming through from the light map, and these both are using different light maps now. So that's pretty much the entire process. You just have to go through each texture group and do it one after the other. It's more time consuming, but the overall outcome will be a lot better quality. The last thing that you really have to do is open up Photoshop and reduce each texture map's resolution to 256 by 256, and they'll come out just fine. That's the last thing you do. And the reason you do that is because you always create a texture. Even if you're baking a light map and you're doing this whole process the way we're doing it, you always create it at 4 times the resolution. So we created at 512, which is 4 times the resolution of 256. So that's what you want to do, because you get better blending whenever you shrink them down that way. So just go in, shrink them all down to 256. You're good to go. I hope you guys enjoyed these videos, and I hope they're very helpful to you.